Thank you, Evelyn. Good morning, everyone. How is everybody? Thank you, everyone, for coming today. It is a joy to share this morning with you all. I want to begin by reading from Whispers from Eternity. Yogananda writes on the back of this book, he says, there are 3 Bibles from which I draw my inspiration: the Christian Bible, the Hindu Bhagavad Gita, and my Whispers from Eternity, which were given to me by God. So I want to start by reading. This is number 55. I want to build a rainbow bridge of self-realization. Such a beautiful visualization. The gulf of ages lay between thee and me, widening as the waters of my oblivion of thee grew through centuries. I stand on this rocky shore of matter, gazing out over the gulf, hoping to see beyond thy smooth shores of peace. My inner thought architects will build for me a bridge of constant remembrance of thee. The strong mental girders of self-control now are being riveted together. My dreams of thee gather to make a rainbow bridge of self-realization over which very soon I will reach thy shore. Yogananda frequently advised his disciples to memorize a poem called Samadhi, and which poetically describes his experience of cosmic consciousness. Of it, he said, visualize yourself in that infinite state. Identify yourself with it in order to awaken within you that lost memory of what you are in reality, children of infinity. For that alone is what you really are. I remember many years ago when I first came to the path, I was encouraged to memorize the poem Samadhi, and you'll find it in here. I'll be reading from it this morning. And my initial reaction to it was, I can't do that. And there's many reasons for that. One is the length of the poem. It's 2.5 pages long. Okay. Second point is that there was unfamiliar spiritual imagery in the poem. And I wanted to start by reading the first few words, first few lines. Vanished the veils of light and shade, lifted every vapor of sorrow, sailed away all dawns of fleeting joy, gone the dim sensory mirage. Love, hate, health, disease, life, death, perish these false shadows on the screen of duality. And it goes on. The spiritual imagery, I had never heard anything like it. And then when I learned that he wrote this poem on a New York City subway, I said, where was he going? Which stop was it? And I feel, for those of you who don't know, I'm from New York City, from Brooklyn, New York, and the thought was he couldn't have been going to Brooklyn. But I think in retrospect, in retrospect, I think it was my initial reluctance may have been just to the challenge of Samadhi itself. You know, here I am in this small little self, and it was hard for me to see that how can I even get to the point of Samadhi? I'm not even feeling that consciousness. It felt like there was such a vast gulf, to use those words. In Reader's Digest a couple of years ago, I read an article about Billy Graham, and he tells a story in his early career when he shows up to a small town, and he asks this boy, where's the post office? And after the boy tells him, he says, you know, you should come to my talk tonight, because I'm going to be telling people how to get into heaven. And the little boy shakes his head, I don't think I'm going to come. You don't even know how to get to the post office. Yogananda said the time for knowing God has come. If we want to know God, like our reading so beautifully reminded us this morning, we need to live in the consciousness that we have him already, that we're made in his image. I love the story of the little girl that was sitting next to her grandfather while he was reading her a bedtime story. And she would, look at the story, and then she would look up at his face, and she would take her little finger and just, bring it down his wrinkled cheek, and then she would touch her own cheek. And then she would go back and touch his wrinkled cheek, and then she would touch her own. And then she finally says, "Grandpa, did God make you?" And he said, "Oh yeah, but God made me a long, long time ago." And then she thinks about it. She said, "Well, God," she said, "Grandpa, did God make me too?" And he said, "Oh yeah, honey, but he made you just a little while ago." And then she looks down at her book, and then she again touches his little wrinkled cheek, and she touches her own, and then she says, "I think God's getting better at it." Our reading this morning reminded us to live in that consciousness that we know God. But how do we do that? Okay, a couple of points on that is Yogananda talked about environment and the importance of environment. Surround ourselves with people, surround ourselves with items that remind us of that consciousness. We have pictures of the masters on our walls, not for their sake, not because they need to be up there, but to remind us of that consciousness, to remind us of who we really are. And then we also want to surround ourselves with people, and again, in environments that support that awareness, support that remembrance. There's a story in the early days of Ananda when the founder, Swami Kriyananda, was traveling with a group of his friends. And it was one morning they had been on tour, and they were just getting up, and they were just kind of groggy and not feeling too good, a little tired. And in he walks in, and Swami Kriyananda, and he says, "Good morning, great souls." And they're all looking around, who's he talking to? And they realize he was talking to them, right? Surrounding ourselves constantly with people, environment, books, readings, pictures, anything that supports that reminder of who we really are. And then, we need to practice. We need to practice this, and that was a new concept for me. Why do I need to practice remembering God? And then somebody said, "Well, you do sports." I go, "Yeah, well, you practice with sports." And I was remembering when I was first learning how to play tennis. I had to learn form, your forehand and your backhand, but I did it against a wall. And it was pretty stationary, but I kept doing it over and over. And I kept bugging my instructor, "I want to go out on the net. I want to go out where it's real there." And he's like, "No, you have to learn form. You have to stay here till you learn it over and over." And it was for a long time, it seemed like, before he allowed me to go and play at the net. But when I finally went to the net, all of a sudden then, I didn't know where the ball was coming back. I didn't know if it was going to be a backhand or a forehand, or if it was in the back of the court or the front of the court. And then at that point, I realized how important it was that I practiced when the wall was stationary. And I practiced over and over. I learned my backhand. I learned my forehand. I learned so much. And then when I got out there in an actual game, I was able to anticipate. I was able to handle when the ball came way over my head or whatever. The same thing is true on the spiritual path. We need to practice when we can. We need to practice when the sun is shining or when it's raining. We need to practice as much as possible, because then what happens? We strengthen that muscle. We strengthen that muscle of remembrance. Oh yes, this is what it's all about, because it's going to get hard. We're going to get thrown a curveball, or a ball's going to go over our head or under our swing. We can't control what life is going to be coming at us, but if we can practice our techniques and keep that remembrance going while it's easier, then we can keep that going even when it gets more difficult. And then not allowing those thoughts. For me, I was always so hard on myself. But I can't achieve samadhi. I can't remember God when I'm not good enough, when I have all these faults. Remembering to let go of all those things that hold us back from that remembrance, right? We just carry these things. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. Whatever it is, you can fill the blank in. A famous Swami from India was asked once if he was a Hindu. And he said, "I'm an undu." I'm an undu. He goes, "I'm not all these things. I'm an undu. I'm letting go of these things that I so preciously hold and think that that's who I am." in our purification ceremony, that's what we practice every week, right? We throw those seeds of karma into this fire ceremony. If you can ever come to the 9 o'clock service. It's so different from this one. We have a fire ceremony, a purification service, where every week we throw into the fire all those things. We undo who we think we are. We discover we're something so much more deeper. I love the story of the sculptor who wanted to create a beautiful sculpture, and he went up a mountain and he brought down this huge rock, and he realized it was too big, so he cut it in half, and he decided he's going to make a sculpture out of one half. So he starts chiseling it, but that half of the rock didn't like that he was chiseling it. He's like, ow, ow, what are you doing? You're hurting me. And the sculptor said, well, I'm trying to create something beautiful. And this rock said, well, I don't like you touching me. It's hurting me too much. And the sculptor said, okay. So he went to the other half, and he started chiseling the other half instead. But that other half, he was wise. He knew. He says, ow, this really hurts. But, you know, I trust that something more beautiful is going to come out of this. Keep going. And at one point, the sculptor stopped, and the rock says, why are you stopping? Keep going. I'm anxious to see what you're going to create out of me. And so that sculptor, he kept, you know, chiseling away. And when you think about it, when you create a sculpture, right, you don't add a nose or you don't add features, right? You take pieces of rock away and then you find what's inside, right? You find the beauty in there. And so finally he finished this sculpture that he was creating, and it was so beautiful that the town decided to build this altar around it and this huge temple. And then they wanted to have a huge ceremony, and the sculptor wanted to pour milk and honey on it, but he couldn't reach the top of it, so he needed something to step on. So he sees that other rock in the corner, and he pulls that rock over, and he puts it there, and he steps on the rock, and he's pouring milk and honey and honoring this other one. And after the ceremony was over, the rock on the floor says to the rock on the altar, hey, you. Hi, how come you're up there and I'm down here? What's going on? And the rock up on the altar said, don't you get it? You know, God started to, he's like a sculptor. He was trying to create something beautiful, but you didn't like it. You know, and so that's why you were down there and I'm up here. You know, beautiful reminder. Beautiful reminder. You know, just God is like a sculptor. He's trying to create the beautiful piece of us, but it's hard, you know, but we will come out shining if we remember environment, remember the things that help us to remember to have that awareness. Yogananda said, I see you all as images of light. Yogananda said to his disciples, everything, the grass, the trees, the bushes, everything I see is made of light. You have no idea how beautiful it all is. A saint once said, you have no idea how beautiful you are. So this reading this morning is such a beautiful reminder that we are children of light. We are children of light through control of our senses, through control of the discipline of our practices, surrounding ourselves in environments, surrounding us with people that support that awakening. And that samadhi there isn't as much distance as we think there is. There isn't that. The samadhi is right there inside of us, waiting to be awakened. One of my favorite Sanskrit words, that smriti, that divine remembrance of who we are. It's inside of us. We just need to awaken that. I want to end with, I won't read the whole poem of Samadhi. I'm going to end now with the last part of it, which is so beautiful. Let's close our eyes. Just roll our shoulders back. Feel the heart expanding. Feel the heart relaxing. Feel the mind also calming down, accepting this, who we really are. From joy I came, for joy I live. In sacred joy I melt. Ocean of mind, I drink all creation's waves. 4 veils of solid, liquid, vapor light lift aright. Myself and everything enters the great myself. Gone forever, fitful, flickering shadows of mortal memory. Spotless is my mental sky, below, ahead, and high above. Eternity and I, one united ray, a tiny bubble of laughter, I am become the sea of mirth itself. Om, peace. Amen. And now we'll have some music.